Well, I am very excited for today's discussion. Now, you may have looked at the title and thought, my goodness, grief, loss? What are you talking about, Jason? That's not normally the kinds of things that you talk about. But I'm excited because all of us, right? All of us experience grief and loss throughout our life. And it's how we choose to deal with that. We can see it as a gift or something that's not a gift, right? And so I'm excited to have my friend Debbie Wood with me today, where we're actually going to jump in and talk about it. Because again, whether it's, maybe losing a family member, whether it's losing a job, whether it's losing your identity, if you will, we all experience grief and loss in our life. And today we're going to talk about how to turn that into a gift. So with that, let's roll the episode. All right, Debbie, my friend, I am so excited to have you here with me.
I am too.
Well, and it's, this is a topic I haven't told you some stuff. I mean, we're friends, but I haven't told you some stuff because I wanted it to kind of come out today on the podcast as well, as we go through this, because this is it's a serious topic. It's something that so many people deal with, but not a lot of people talk about. And I think you've seen that from helping people yourself, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, I just had to do one thing because I'm a little off the wall. You know that anyway, right? So Debbie, don't stop now. Why stop now, right? So Debbie, I'm in California. You're in which
Vermont.
state? In Vermont. So when you think of Vermont, what do you think of, right? You think of
maple syrup.
Maple syrup, and I have some Woods bourbon.
Way!
Maple syrup.
Oh, I know. My God. That's amazing. You did the research. I'm impressed.
And especially when I because I knew that your husband has the company from what we were talking about. And so I jumped on there and I'm like, holy shit. Bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. Are you kidding me? I'm all over that.
Yeah, that's just a little side thing he does.
Yeah, so it's a yummy thing, and I did get a few extra bottles for some people for Christmas.
So awesome. I'll let him know. That means a lot. Thank you.
Well, because it's one of our sons really likes rum, so of course I had to get the rum one. And anyway, I just had to do that, and I like to see you smile too. But anyway,
and I will refrain from doing my typical when we're at the shows. Don't forget it's great on ice cream and.
Oh well, there's a little sweet stuff
in
our life anyway. So. But no, so I guess let's kind of get into what we're planning to talk about today, because I know you have had some of these experiences in your life that have led you to help people who have gone through grief and loss. So maybe let me just kind of turn it over to you. Maybe just share a little bit of your story and why you help people with this.
So I have been drawn to the topic of loss for several years, and it was really started or birthed out of the adoption. I have 3 biological sons, and then I have 3 adopted children, 2 girls. They're not biologically related because that's always the next question, who were adopted at 3 years old and 1. And then a year and a half later, a boy who was adopted because of our story through the same place in Liberia, West Africa. Long story, he ended up in our home at the age of 9. So I didn't have words for it like I do now. And for many adoptive families, that's the word, is the loss in their body shows up in all sorts of ways. For me, there was loss of the family I'd had before we adopted that I didn't know was going to happen. And so you have a lot of mixed feelings. And then over the years, different behavioral issues, the stress on the marriage. We've been married 27 years to the same person. So I started reading up kind of about grief and loss outside of the typical narrative of it has to be around a loved one. And so I just loved learning about it and reframing it and kind of seeing it as a platform to start over, let go, and what is possible from here. And then May of last year, our daughter, who was 17, our adopted daughter, passed away suddenly. And we found out it was from a seizure disorder, even though we had had her tested. She had had about 3 or 4 random seizures out of nowhere the year before. And so she passed away. And I remember after the knees hit the ground that night, that I knew I would not do this healing journey alone. I don't know why that thought came to me, but I knew I could not let this, you just know this is going to destroy everything that I knew and held dear and was pure. You just instantly feel a purity in your life, and innocence of your life is just stolen. And then I just kind of set the intention that I would find help in some way. And it's like such an intuitive thought right now that came to me, that I knew I wasn't prepared to walk that, and no one else was going to know how to walk it with me, because at the time I didn't know any other person who had lost an older child. People lose them through miscarriage, and no matter when you lose a loved one, it's very painful and awful. So fast forward in the summer, that was in May. And then in the summer, I happened to listen to a podcast, and it was this lady talking about the 5 stages of grief and how that was BS. And I just thought, I love this lady, because I didn't want to have to go through stages. And I knew within me, not everybody, but I knew for me, I didn't want to take a long time to move through my grief story or journey. And I wasn't thinking I got to save my family either. There was a point on the plane when we flew down to, do the viewing and bring her home, that absolute fear, because I could see the heads of my children, they were adult children, and my husband. And I thought, oh my God, are we over? And then I breathed and said, no, we're going to be okay. We're going to be different, but we're going to be okay. So I think that, combined with the intention, I found Denise. And she is a widow who works with other widows, and didn't start out that way, but that's her story. And she ended up, people were like, you should help people. And then she had a vision of creating an academy where other coaches, there's niches that they've lost a loved one, whether it's a parent, child, husbands, whatever it is. And we work with people, for me specifically, parents who are ready to do the work around identity, just kind of unpacking, what does it feel like to no longer be a parent of a child, no matter what the age. There's a lot of changing in your routine, your habit, identity, as far as do I call myself a mom? Like, people will say, how many children do you have? And I always say 6, but then I don't know if I'm supposed to, you have to feel it out. Well, 1 went to heaven. And then there's that change of conversation. And then you feel like you got to pick them up because you really are okay, because I've done the work. But yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And then I sit here talking to you, and I am so aware of the incredible gifts that have come to me out of this loss. And I swear I can sit here and say, I wouldn't change it. I want her back. And I'm shaking saying this. I wouldn't change anything, because I truly believe in this idea that it was her time, and that her leaving ushered in this incredible story and challenge and amazing life that I'm now living completely out of that loss. But it's also because I've done the work, and I'm putting on a new way of looking at things and choosing a new identity today while grieving and the loss of the family, and yet again, and then not taking on all of the responsibility of how are all my loved ones doing? Oh my gosh, my husband. But I couldn't do it alone. So I went through what Denise has created, a course that we do one-on-one, an 8-week program, and you dive in and you do the work, and then we meet together one-on-one. And some clients work with me for a few more months. Some want to keep going for the year. And you come into a community of other parents who know that the loss, the death of their loved one was the opening. It just magnified what wasn't working, which I would say is kind of what loss does. It kind of rattles your chains, so to speak. And you either kind of lose the way you did things and you're like off kilter, or you find the support. And that's the strength and the courageous thing, whether it's starting with a book or you find the podcast. That's how a lot of my life has been. And then eventually that one-on-one work or in group coaching where you hear other people, they may ask a question. And I love that quote, what's most general is most personal, and you grow together and you get stronger. So.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting, as you as you describe that, a lot of times we don't share, or people just don't know, right? So when you lost your daughter, again, you're like, geez, am I the only one, right? I don't know anybody else who's done that. Well, there's lots of other people who have done it, because what I haven't told you too is, guess what? When you were talking about at the beginning, 3 biological kids, 3 adopted. I have 2 biological kids, 2 adopted, 2 kind of step from the second marriage. Okay. So as you were talking about, having the adoption and it really kind of being a death or change of what you were originally in and moving into something else, I can totally relate to that, because I have adopted kids as well. Right. My mother, my parents, right? There's 7 of us kids, 2 of which are in heaven, right, as well. So I had, as I've gotten to know you, have started to kind of appreciate or realize how my mother especially was, right? To where she lost a child very young, sudden, 3 years old. Again, you lost your daughter sudden, right? And then my younger brother, again, sudden, right? And so we all experience this, but we don't realize how many other people are out there that are going through exactly the same thing, right?
And we want to say, we don't even say it's the human condition, loss. But we don't have language for it many times.
Well, it is, and that's why some of the things that you said here, that let's just kind of jump into a little bit more. And again, I mean, this is, we're talking about a death, but again, it's any loss. This kind of goes along with, right? Like I heard you say that you felt like your innocence of life was stolen. Maybe explain that. What does that mean? What does that feel like? And how do you get through that?
So I would say the previous years before her passing, there were these moments where you're connecting with the child just for her, I guess I should say. And she, would get mad, and I didn't always have the tools. So I'd get mad back. And you just, when they were little, you were connected. And then all of a sudden, and this is kind of common, I mean, teenagers, period.
Well, there comes a point and it's like,
so that's what I'm saying. It's the normal condition. We have this huge, heavy, awful death of a child. But my goodness, every day we have to be open to what this is, or we'll numb out, and you have to feel the loss of it. So it's just the innocence of, you remember, they don't remember how we saw them, this cute, innocent child. And then what they see is this angry parent and they take it on and they build stories around it. And so the innocence of just this beautiful acceptance between the 2 of us, that I'm fully loved and my mom gets me and she accepts me. I could feel like that wasn't there. And then she's yelling at me, saying things, and you're like, my gosh, you were hanging on to my leg and saying I was the best thing that ever happened to you. And I love my mommy and I can't go to school without you. And then all of a sudden you're in this, these hostile, same with a marriage, or a partnership. And then, so the death, it was like you all of a sudden you watch, I can feel it now. It's the worst splintering that goes out, and you can feel my daughter here, just like everybody starts screaming, and I ran, like I needed to run. So I ran into the house, and you just know you're not the same, and you can't ever get it back. And you feel like you didn't just lose her, you lost everybody, because they're not going to be the same. I'm not, even as, my best days are ahead of me, but it won't be who I was in that moment before her passing. And we were literally taking photos outside. It was so incredibly peaceful. All my kids were home, because of COVID, the sea. And so they were home. And then that was a miracle. And we're taking pictures with the dog, and you couldn't have had a more innocent moment. And then the phone call, and they're not the same. And we still, beautiful family. I love us. We love, I mean, it's definitely made us incredibly tight in that regard. But my oldest, he's figuring it out his way, but he's definitely not the same. And it's again multiplied of this, I can't be attached anymore to how I thought it was going to look. I have to live here and now, be in the present. I mean, that's the gift of death, gift of loss. You either choose to be here and now, or you will keep going either in the past or you're in the future. So your children lose their mom because you're not there. And you can say you are, but you're not when you're not here. And that's why the work is so important. But that's what I mean by the innocence. I don't know if that was a long answer.
No, because it brought up some other questions or things to maybe talk about, because it's, as you're talking about or explaining that, that's obviously what we feel when there's a major event like a death. But as you were sitting there talking, it's like these things happen to us all the time, right? Because there just come those different points in our life when things will never be like they were before. And again, it doesn't have to be death. It's anything else, right? And this is where, again, like you said, we can choose to just hang out in the past and woe is me. I want things to be like they were. But that's not how life works, right? I mean, you're not going to have the expansion you were meant to have here. There has to be a ripping. There, working out, you rip the muscle down and it builds back stronger. Nature, you have to prune trees in order for it to blossom even more. We don't want to feel that what we consider a pain or it's an interruption to what felt so comfortable and normal. And yet, if you can reframe it, that get comfortable with the uncomfortable, lean into that, you will get through what this feels like, especially the death part of the absence of their presence. You can't call her up again. You can't talk to her. I can't text her. I have no control. But then you kind of move through that. But yeah. Well, you do, and it's interesting because, like you said, I like how you said that with the reframing, right? So, with my brother, I mean, I was 15, he was 13, accidental gunshot wound to the head, gone, right? And at that point, like you said, it was, how do you want to frame it? How do you want to frame it? And for me, because, a little of my backstory, I've got 11 years between me and my next oldest sibling. So without my little brother, I wouldn't have had the experience in life of having a brother. I would have been like an only child, right? And so when I was the accident baby and I came along, my mom wasn't supposed to get pregnant. Right? That's what the doctor told her, and that's why she was really surprised.
But you were determined to be
I was determined to be here, right? But what it did was then they tried again to be able to allow me the opportunity of having a brother. And I remember at that, for me going through that again as a 15-year-old kid, it's kind of hard to understand or wrap your head around a little bit.
Yeah, you're not even, the brain's still developing.
But I remember, I can't even remember who it was, but somebody said something to me that really resonated with me at that time about the fact that, well, weren't you lucky that he came along and you got to have a little brother? And that just really hit me like, again, we all go through these different experiences in our life to make us who we need to be. And as you talk about open the doors, and we're going to go there a little bit more here too, but I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had him in my life for those 13 years.
Exactly.
And yeah, there are days when I think, gosh, how old would he be now? But I don't really focus on that. Instead, I've chosen to reframe it of, how lucky am I
Mm-hmm.
that I got
Mm-hmm.
to have those experiences? Um, I've got the pictures, I've got the memories, I've got all of this stuff that helped me to be who I am today, right? Instead of just sitting in that grief and loss and worrying about the past, right? And I know, so let's talk about, I know when you found, I can't remember what her name was, but the five
Yeah,
stages are
Denise. Mm-hmm.
BS, right?
Yep.
Denise. And because again, most of the time, that goes back to Kubler-Ross, right? The denial, anger, bargaining, depression,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That most people understand or know about. And so the whole idea, or at least I think the way it's usually taught, is look, try to get through all five of those as quick as you can, right? Because you don't want to stay stuck in depression and
Nope.
be angry and move on. But talk a little bit about how do people get through it easier without having to go through these stages? Because again, I mean, I can't remember, we were just watching a movie or a TV show, and somebody, it brought up about the loss and grief too. And they're like, oh, so you're in denial. So you better hurry up and get through anger or whatever. Right. And then what's next? Depression.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way that a lot of us have been taught.
Yeah.
Right. And so we feel like, oh man, I've got to be angry about it. And then I'm going to be depressed and I'm going to have to be on medication or
Mm-hmm.
whatever else. Right.
Right.
So help us understand, how do you get through it without necessarily going through those stages? Because we want it to be a lot easier
Yeah.
than that. Right.
First
Because,
of all, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, because some people spend years
Mm.
stuck. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it has to take that long.
Well, no. And again, it's just we don't have the tools, but I would also suggest, what's the story you've been told about grief? And what does that mean for you? And what if you could recreate how your story around grief goes? And it can be difficult because we're not doing this as a solo journey, most of us. And when I got out of my head about it and just decided, maybe I'll be one of the few out there that decides I don't want this to take, because there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, when we say to move through it quickly. There's this myths that, well, if I move through it quickly, that means I'm letting go of them, or I'm just kind of ignoring it. I'm in denial. And it's not any of that. It's saying I today was thinking, it's kind of like you get the graphic idea that you lose a limb. Your life is still, for the most part, really intact. You're moving forward, but you have these phantom pains. You don't just start today or we move through it and now we're healed. You learn to live with that. It's that kind of practice. This is the new normal. So our acronym within our flow program is the F is for feel. And so often, we'll feel the heavy grief, and I don't have the resource in front of me, but I've heard that the body actually only feels grief, the grieving process, for 6 weeks. What we do after that is up to us. Your body, and it makes me think of Naomi, because I think when she was younger, she wasn't fed regularly, and she's third world country. She learned the body can't stay starving, so it tells itself, I'm not hungry. And if the diaper hasn't been changed, I'm fine. Because when she grew up a little bit more, we saw she was in a lying pattern, and we were helped to understand that's because her brain protected her. Yeah. Same with what we do here. So I think the idea is learning to feel your feelings, and not just feel the pain of, oh my gosh, I can't see them, but a few months after, where is it that you're not actually allowing yourself to go and have a huge ache, or the crying, or the getting out of the bed, or you need to smash something, or you just, your body isn't meant to contain it. It has to release it. So you feel it. And then you let it go. And you're not letting go of your loved one. You're letting go of that moment of the getting used to the new normal. This is a process. And then the O is you're overcoming. So we work with you on what are the areas now in your life that this death, the loss, has triggered, magnified. And we need to, unpack that a bit. Where are some of the stories and the beliefs that are not working? And then the W is that you're whole. You're becoming whole in this particular, let's say it's affected the business and you can't focus, but you realize, as I have and most of the clients, it's never the death that held them back in these areas. It just magnified it. So I think my biggest piece of advice for people is that it's a normal process. There was a lady who was in the widows group. She'd been mourning her husband 14 years and just starting to do this work. She's already, had so much growth because it's really coming back to you and loving yourself and putting yourself first, self-acceptance, self-love. And that's kind of where it starts.
Yes, let's just kind of go through that a little bit. We can use that losing a limb analogy, right? Because that's a great one, right? So I'll be Pirate Jason, for a little bit, and let's say I have, I lost a leg, let's say, right? So again, I mean, everything that we're talking about is, emotional in nature, usually for grief, but let's put it into the context of a limb, right? Because it's a way for people to think about this. And often if we think about it in that way, we can understand it better emotionally, because sometimes the emotional stuff is not really tangible and it's hard for us to wrap our mind around it, right? Exactly. So, okay, so I get in some sort of an accident, I lose one of my legs. Okay. So first off, I'm going to need to feel, right? So what does that kind of look like? How do people actually feel?
Well, they're angry. You're feeling, this isn't fair. Why would this happen to me? What did I feel? I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. My kid's going to get in the car and drive. What if he dies? How do I keep them? Am I going to lose other people? Wait a minute. We don't all get to be together. How do I live life without people? How do I stay close to them? But then what if, without getting I don't want to get too attached to them. I don't want to need anybody. So graduation's coming. She'd be graduating. Everybody's talking about graduation, but no one's noticing that I'm here and we're not talking about her graduating. She would have been with your class. And just kind of that feeling bitter, you have to kind of let that thing that whatever it is come up so you can, a bird just ran into the window. You can feel it and then don't let it run away. You kind of get a hold of it, so to speak. And you are in control of where you take this, so to speak. And if it's the limb, I would imagine there's that, you got to feel like my whole life is over. How do I not, I'm gonna have to have a wheelchair. You're just, the support you're going to need in your life is changing.
Because I would assume, with something like a limb, right? I mean, again, I haven't done this, but
exactly.
Again, maybe it's like you said, I'm going to be feeling like, oh man, how am I going to do this? Or I was a runner, or I consider myself an athlete. And now, what am I going to do? I might be angry, especially maybe if it was something that I did that was stupid, right?
Exactly.
That led to it. So now I might feel a little guilty at doing it, right? I might start to feel like, oh, my whole life is wasted now. But again, so at that point, because then I think we quickly kind of move into the let it go, or that's what I wanted to kind of say, because you're talking about, and this is one thing I've learned, especially the last year or so, is it's okay to feel those emotions. It's just not okay to get stuck. Absolutely. And stay in those emotions, right? So how do we, so I guess at that point we're kind of feeling it, but then we have to kind of let it go, or
and when you honor what you're feeling, it's an honoring. I think so many of us, especially in emotional world, we're taught so often, okay, you're sad, now move on. Or you didn't get the test you wanted, didn't come out the way you wanted. You didn't get the job, but tomorrow's a new day, you know, and we kind of make a happy statement because we all want to stay in that state of what we think is happy. But what happens is if it's not allowed, because energy is, I mean, emotions are energy in motion. And so when you don't allow it to at least come out and either find a way to, you know, maybe exercise, take a walk, the letting go isn't that we're just going to not go there and we're not journaling, you know, maybe voice recording how you're feeling. Nobody else has to see it, but it's not just seeing it. Now you have to actively do something with it. And so building a new practice in your life of when it does come up and it's maybe around the grief and loss, because it's going to come back up again. Where do you go with that? That could be a healthier habit than just stuffing or doing all the other numbing things that most of us do when we have, and just practice and being kind if you're not able to let it go. You know, that's in the moment, and just being curious with yourself. And
so we're actually kind of doing something, because like you said, there's got to be some activeness to it, right, as well. And I know, so for example, I don't know if you did this, but I saw this in my family, right? When my brother died, his room stayed intact, right?
Right.
The door just the door just got closed, you know, for a long time. And I don't know if my parents did, but I did. I would go in and lay on his bed and, you know, do stuff as part of kind of the letting go. But it's kind of the, now we got to get on with our life. Right. So again, if I've lost one of my legs, at some point, I've got to get my butt up off the couch and actually go do something, go get some crutches, figure out about prosthetics. Yeah. I mean, because start to change my stories as well, right? Because again, that's one where you might say, you know, oh, well, I lost my leg. Well, again, one of the documentaries we were watching last night, there was a guy that lost a leg in the military, and he's doing just fine with a prosthetic, right? I mean, how many Olympians and other people have been able to do it? So changing our stories, moving ourselves closer to that way, and just letting go of what we thought the future was going to be. Right.
Something that's helped me is sitting with, this was going to happen. And I know that goes against everything we want to say that we could have prevented. You know, she wasn't even in our care at the time. She was at a different school. I have the guilt. Oh, I wasn't there. But if you really sit in, if you saw my whole life, Deb, if you're looking at your whole life, honey, this was going to be a part of it. It's new to you, but from this higher vantage point, this was always a part of the timeline. Here's this next stage of who you become, and you're still this woman, but now who are you going to be with this new chapter, you know, with this prosthetic? We're gonna bounce back and forth through this. But then you did, like, that's what I had to start to recognize, was that the life that I knew was over. So that meant I had to kind of do new things, like, well, how do I see myself as a mom? All of a sudden I had all this extra, not energy, but I was so used to dealing with her life and the things that were around her, whether it was positive or negative. You just get so used, and they're not there. So you have to kind of I don't even know how. I think you learn new things, but we still have some stuff of hers. But this week I was like, you know what, we need to clean out our basement, and it's time. But I thought, do I sell some of it, or do I don't really want to give it away, because it feels like and then I'm like, well, why are we attaching any meaning to her stuff? She's not here. So you kind of go, it's kind of, you have to let yourself go there. You've never done this before. Like rehab with the leg, you've got to get used. And then if there is the phantom pain, that's what I would consider. All of a sudden I'll see a picture of her, and the reality that I can't have her put her arm out on me, and instantly I'll feel the emotion and I'll cry it out. But then I go into the part of letting go now for me is, oh my gosh, going back to what you said earlier, the absolute joy and gratitude that I got to know this kid who nobody knew was even interested in from the other side of this globe. We attracted each other, and I brought her home from Liberia, and she was in my house. What? That's amazing. And the laughter and the joy that she brought in, the knowing that I'm not the same. But I think what happens because the grief is two-sided, we think of the negative, but this side of it is, we have this tendency with grief to if you don't let it go, kind of you stay in the stuckness, is that you miss out you miss out on the value of her or your loved one. You miss out on that. That energy never changes, that energy of having them and loving them. And we've gotten so used to the physical way we love each other. They have to be here. I should write, but that doesn't ever end. I can still visit my memories. I can still, who I am here is because of her in my life. So when I'm choosing to live in the best place I can right now, she's here. And that's part of, I think, where I rest now is I have a choice to live my life so fully alive because she passed away. I am so much more aware of being here and what do I want my life to look like, and I'm going to leave someday. So what do I want to go about now doing in my life? Yeah, it's the big esoteric questions and thoughts.
Well, I love going esoteric myself. Okay, we can go down lots of rabbit holes. No, because as you were talking, again, it's we get taught certain things in our life. We get taught these stories, indoctrinated. And as you were sitting there talking, I was thinking to myself, if you don't feel grateful for the impact that Naomi had in your life, for how she helped make you a better woman.
Yep.
And if you don't get on and live your life as the new Debbie,
right,
who has learned this new stuff, what almost a disrespect it is to having her in your life. And again, for a lot of people, that's going to be like, holy shit, Jason, what did you just say? Right.
But let's poke that bear.
Yeah, but really, I mean, it's like, again, if we can't come to terms with and get to that place of gratitude, and again, like you said, there's the ripping, there's
the process.
there's death in nature, but there has to be death for renewal, right? Along the whole way. And so why do we think as humans that we're any different? And it's about time to, get on and move on up, if you will, right? That place of gratitude and letting go and allowing what's coming, or the gift that you got from the grief that you went through. Because you're a completely different person now than you were a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
Because of this.
Yeah, my whole frame of how I look at the world, it's like, that's the gift of loss and death. If you choose to go there with it, what is it here to teach me? And if I'm not attached to what does it mean for me, and it's got to be about me and my loss, and I no longer have my child, and you can get into this identity of very easily you can look to others to come and not coddle you, but I'm going to say that's what we can rehash our grief story. And at the end of the day, that just gets old, because you're actually disrespecting your own life. You get this one good life. You can choose to stay in this and say, well, it's my right. And I do believe in the 5 stages, which, by the way, I guess that lady wrote it about cancer and her own journey, and then it was morphed into all this. And there's no right or way to grieve, but you have loved ones in your life. It's not about you. You're here to love and serve and create expansion for those who are with you. And it's, it's choice.
Well, it is. And as you were talking there, it reminded me of kind of what you were sharing at the beginning, where a lot of times, especially grieving parents, they withdraw. There's the rest of the family that's there. And so now it's not like, the kids didn't just lose a sibling.
Right.
They also lost a parent at the same time. Exactly. Right. And that's again, it's our impact that we have on everybody else as well, too.
Yeah.
Right?
And that brings up something I meant to mention earlier. I remember in that moment, the first couple of hours, were together and crying and holding, and very, very clear to me, you can't abandon them. And I have enough in me, like the resources and being around loss, and I was reading about it, that I was able to go there quickly with that. I know most people may not think they're abandoning their children because they're grieving the other child that they lost. But I knew whatever it took, I needed to still show up. They still need the mom that they had. They still need an intact home. They still need a home that is going to be predictable and safe, and not, grieving. We did it for a couple of months. You definitely could feel it in the house, but we got back to a somewhat normal. We weren't in denial, but we needed to get back to our rhythm and a routine, because that's what the human spirit needs. And our children, they were, older, but they needed that. And it was good for me to kind of get back to a normalcy, and then with my husband, we needed to go back to laughing. I mean, I remember the first few times when you start to feel joyful, you're like, ooh, and this is so common with everybody. I've heard this even before Naomi passed, that awkwardness. Do I have the right to be happy? Yes, because when we're joyful and happy and at well-being and peace, that ripple effect just expands those around us in our home and our communities. So I just wanted to add that little piece, that it was very important to me, even now, to see them. He's there in front of me, my child. Naomi's not here, but I am fully his mom here now. And then we'll have conversations. My oldest is very much open to talking about, he always checks in, but not the other kids. And you'll find that too. Some people will check in, but very few, and then with those ones you do, who say, how are you doing? You get to have that conversation. Well, today it was just, I really missed, she could just put her hand on my shoulder. And then he says, yeah, it's really hard for me not to be able to make a TikTok video and send it to her. And that is such another way of the letting go. You're getting it out. You're, sometimes I think too, we get nervous about, do we bring it up to our children? Do I even bring it up to my husband? We don't really have conversations, Al and I, but once in a while I will, I'll cry, or I'll, whatever it is, maybe I'm being moody, and I'll say, I think it's because I think grief is in my body, or, loss, I'm feeling lost. You don't know. And so you just have to have the conversation with your family members of, I'm just navigating this, or the kids, maybe they're snappy and, edgy. We just assume there's part of the grief showing itself and loss, and we don't make anything of it. And if that's the last thing I'll say, is the gift that it's given us is we're much more open to them reacting, and not just demanding this kind of demanding thing of, well, you're moody today, or get yourself back into happy mode because that'll make us feel better. You just can't bottle it, that it's going to come up. And so we're much more patient. We're much more open to allowing emotion. And it's a huge gift.
Well, it is. And that's, that it is something that can be overcome much quicker usually than I think what most people are taught about, right? And that's one of the things that you're helping people do. But
yeah,
I wanted to also ask, because and again, this comes up from time to time too, is when people who have experienced some of the loss, sometimes we're a little awkward. We don't know, right. What do you say? What do you do? I mean, how is the best way to support people that are going through grief and loss? Because, again, it's like, sometimes it's like, pull up your big boy pants and right. Put a smile on your face. Right. But that's not really helpful. Right. So how, because we've been talking about how we can kind of support ourselves, feel it, let it go, overcome, put some of those new habits, those new things in place, see the world differently, have different stories, and that we can be a whole person, and realize that, again, it's part of our whole experience, right? Is all the stuff that we're going through. But if there's somebody in your life who's experienced it and you want to help support them, how are some of the best ways to support other people?
I think it's allowing is the word that I would you're holding space. I think so often, I think most people are just not, we're so ill prepared to handle how to communicate about what we're feeling, first of all, and then add this, that they don't know what they're feeling even. I think a lot of people are just unaware that they're feeling it. So if it's maybe an interaction and like you don't know, or I think just showing up, being yourself, but not trying to hide the elephant in the room, just being aware that it's also their journey. And sometimes you just have to wait for the cue. Maybe if they're like snippy at you, it's just giving them extra grace. It really is just the body doesn't always, I guess I go back to Naomi, and I can look back now and see a lot of what she was going through as a teenager in her early years. And her anger was more about, she didn't have words for what was happening. She really didn't. And I think most of us just don't have words. So it's just that comfortable space that you can provide by sitting with them, maybe sending a card. That's the one thing that stopped, was you get all these cards in the beginning and then there's nothing. So if you have a thought of them and send a card and just say, I was thinking of you today. I know you miss her every day. And or maybe if it's like a graduation, this is so good because I haven't even really thought, like, what would I do? Like graduation time. And if you know that they're, like, they say they lost their child and they're young, all these years later, if you're like a family member, you'd be the only one to know this, that their child will be graduating this year. What an amazing thing to get a card that would say, I'm, thinking of her, that she would have graduated this year. Maybe for other people that would be a trigger, but welcome it. If it makes you go, oh my gosh, and they would flip out, part of that is just a health, maybe you're not responsible for their reaction. Maybe that's what I mean to say. Just see, even trying to analyze, well, just show up. If it's something you want to send a card, or you would send a text, or can I give you a hug today? And maybe they say no or say yes. I don't think we need to worry about how they react. You have some love to give. You have some joy. Your presence is all that is needed. And just the fact that you're sending them that vibration of love and encouragement, that's all that matters. And the fact that you're even trying. Because it is, everybody gets awkward. Everybody. Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to kind of end up on it. It's a life lesson in general for anybody, right? Is that if we can just show up, allow other people to be who they are, allow them to be on the journey that they're going to be on,
exactly,
and hold space for them,
mm-hmm.
And not try to fix it, because
mm-hmm.
we can't fix it. It's their journey. Right. But if we're there,
you can't put a missing limb back on there. You can't put the missing limb back on.
No,
it's done. It's final, and it's okay. Finality is a gift. It's beautiful. It's now help them pivot, support them in the pivoting. That's really where we need as a human species to help one another, because we don't, the person pivoting doesn't know what they're doing, and the people around, all of a sudden everybody's changing. It's like, wait, you're not the same. Everything is just so interesting and different, but it's normal. It's okay what's going on. And we're taught how to get and, marry and get a partner and have kids, but we're not taught how to let go. And so it's just allowing each other that space to just figure this next phase, next chapter out. And no, time does not heal all wounds, and you don't heal grief, you heal yourself. And I think that's an important lesson. Grief is a gift, but if you don't tend to it in the way that it needs to be, it can certainly wreak some havoc in your life.
Well, it can. Yeah. And I did. And what you brought up there too, about having gone through several deaths in my family as well. Yep. Again, if somebody's listening and somebody who's gone through that, there's a huge outpouring the first mm-hmm. week, the mm-hmm. funeral, mm-hmm. all of that kind of stuff. And then everybody retreats, everybody else goes back to their regular life.
Yep.
So if you really want to help somebody, reach out to them at those times when other people are withdrawing. That's usually 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. Mm-hmm. And just be there, just show up, just don't have to talk, don't have to fix anything. Mm-hmm. Just let people know that you're thinking about them, that you love them, and you're there to support them. Hey, if you want a hug, I'm here for hugs.
Yeah. And I will say, because now that I go around town, I notice it seems like more and more people, I'm sorry, I'm like losing my light. But more and more people are saying hi to me. It could just be me noticing, but I think just go about, I have one lady who's a friend who will text and say, how are you feeling about Naomi today? Or have you a memory that you've had about Naomi? And I love that. That's great, because it gives me an opportunity to share, and I don't have to answer right away. Remember, people don't always have to answer right then. So if it's a text or a card, that gives them the space to kind of, what do I want to respond? But also, if you see someone who has had a loss, still say hi to them and treat them as if that life is going on, because we also feel awkward that, that we are changing. So it's like this, and you can just be so sensitive to like, and then also, hey, me saying hi to people in the beginning was kind of awkward because you knew that they knew Naomi was not here anymore. And yet she's happy and saying hi because like I said, life goes on, and in the beginning, 90% of your day is awful. And then before you know it, it's like 80%. And then before you know it, 70. And then pretty much life is feeling normal. And then occasionally you're hit again by the 2x4. Oh gosh, we're that family now. But yeah, both sides. It's just practice, getting used to it.
Well, and I think, again, I love the idea that grief is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story that serves all of us very well,
yep.
regardless of whatever grief or loss we may go through. If we see everything that's happening to us as a gift,
mm-hmm.
be grateful for what we're learning,
mm-hmm.
and just keep moving along,
mm-hmm.
right? That's a great recipe for a happy life.
Yeah. And what if life is about your learning? Not just things happening to us and we just get up and we go about it, but truly everything here is operating for our highest and best good. And you have to take that even to your losses, or you are missing out on the deepest lessons of life, and actually helping you to let go even more of things that keep you attached and down. And you'll meet the most amazing people when you start to let go, because you will need that support group, and they come in the most amazing places when you decide that you're not going to do this solo. People love you.
Yeah. Well, and I love you, and thank you for coming on
my brother
today. I know you're my sister from another mister, right?
Exactly, my brother from another mother.
So, well, thank you for coming on, because I know, again, a lot of times, as we were just talking about here at the end, even we don't know what to say. They don't know what to say when we know people are going through tough times.
Yeah.
Again, regardless of what the tough time is.
There's so many tough times. Yeah.
There's so many tough times, divorce. I mean, all these other things. Just show up and love on the other person, hold that space for them, and just allow them to be and understand their path that they're going on. Because like you said, that's actually where the magic really happens in life. That's where the real connection and intimacy really comes from, is in those experiences. And like you said, don't just think of all the good things as gifts, but think of the things that we might label as bad as being a true gift to us as well, because we're learning a lesson that we couldn't learn any other way.
And you're not going to feel this in the middle of it. I mean, we're talking after the body has gone through it and you're getting back to your new normal, but interacting with each other and creating some sense of normalcy, whether it's something that you used to joke with the person, kind of go back to you being you, because and I'm saying this for the person who hasn't had the loss. It's hard enough when we lose somebody, but to notice the dynamics might have changed with other people in our life, that's hard too. So we really do want you to stay you. So if you come into a usually bubbly person, come in bubbly, after a few weeks or a couple months, whatever, sense it out. But we don't want to lose that either. And that's kind of what it feels like in the beginning, because you can sense everybody does this awkward, and they're grieving, you got your people, everyone was grieving. And then eventually we want to have that sense of normalcy back. So.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I know, like you said at the beginning, you're helping parents that are going through this. So how's the best way for people to kind of reach out to you, and if they're needing help, because they're like, Debbie, I'm in the same situation, right? I mean, like I said, more of us are going through this than we realize, because people aren't talking about it.
Right. And we need to collectively talk about it and get the healing going. So you can reach out to me at parentslivingbeyondgrief@gmail.com. Eventually I'll have a website, but for now, just reach out. And even if you just want to say, can you please pray for me, or I need just encouragement, that's what we can start with. And then we can decide if that's something you want to work with me one-on-one. We can have that conversation, but start by just reaching out. That's what I did with Denise. And here I am.
Yeah.
I didn't even, she was a widow, and I was like, I don't even know. And I remember thinking, I don't think I need coaching necessarily, because she won't know what I'm going through. But it was more that the the bond of loss that she knew, and the fact that she chose to get healed, because she had been in therapy for many years, and she remembers going one day and the lady's like, oh, she's like, how long do I feel like this? And I think the therapist said, several years. And she was like, she went, hell no, I am done. Yeah. So she went about her own healing journey. And so that's who I want to work with, people who know that they have more to give, and your best days are ahead of you. And that's hard when you lose a loved one, to have that belief, but there are.
There's lots of good days ahead, and I'm grateful for you coming on here and for the woman that you are and how you're helping people as well. So thank you.
Thanks for letting me share my story.
You're welcome. Thanks.